Welcome back, Pirate Crew. It's your captain, Yeehaw Yadam, and welcome to this week's little series that we're going to call Our Road to the Treasure Cup. I am being joined by a good friend of mine, Freeman Fernando Fuentes. That's not his real name, but he'll go ahead and explain himself in a little bit. I have played many games with this guy. This guy is an exceptional card game player, a mad scientist, trying out a bunch of things. So we're going to go ahead and dive into the scientist lab this entire week. We're going to talk about the decks that he would think about taking to the cup if he were participating. He's put a lot of hours into these decks, a lot of play testing, and there's a lot of input not only from himself, myself, and other really fantastic players that have gotten us to this point. So I hope that through these videos, you guys will learn something and hopefully be able to nab one of those prize cards at the Treasure Cup. So without further ado, Fernando, what should we know about you?
Yeah, for sure. So I want to say hi to everyone. My name is Fernando Fuentes. I'm a local here in Florida. They call me Free. And I've played card games for around 10 to 12 years, more or less. I've played basically a bunch of the Bandai games. Um, it was DBS, then it was Digimon, and now One Piece. One Piece is a lot of fun, and I just wanted to go ahead and share with you guys different decks that I would consider taking to the Treasure Cup, and hopefully you'll be able to find success with some of these decks here. So yeah, let's get
So,
into it.
so starting off, we decided to start off strong in the week. He started off with the Zoro. So coming into Yeehaw's channel and talking about Zoro to my face. No, I'm just kidding.
It's
So
fun.
I think so I think after a bit of testing, and although I do think Monkey D. Luffy has his place and is a fantastic leader, definitely up to your own personal preference. I think I would take Zoro, not because I like Zoro better or anything, but because I think he has the ability to hit for 5 a little bit more consistently than Luffy can, which procs more forms of interaction. With that being said, Fernando, take us through this deck profile.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and touch a little bit on why play Zoro over Luffy because it's a pretty hotly contested, I guess, thing that people think about when making mono red. There's no doubt that mono red is or can be a tier one deck, but the leaders always contest it. So definitely Zoro is played more if you want to go for a wide board strategy, and what that means is that you want to play 4 or 5 characters on your field before you actually start going sideways and attacking the opponent. Where Luffy plays a threat, attacks for that threat, and proceeds to do that over the course of a few turns. So definitely the tempo of the decks is certainly different. As you can see here, we actually try to maximize what Zoro is good at, which is giving 1k to as many eligible attackers as possible. And actually, some of the deck choices reflects that in how low to the ground deck curve is. What that means is all the costs for the cards are between 1, 2, and 3, and then some late game cards.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Zoro just makes magic numbers able to be hit a lot more efficiently, and you can finish off your opponent early. So
No, definitely. I think Zoro, like we were just to enunciate it a little bit more, specifically Zoro, that one Dawn that you put under your leader can be a little bit more impactful than Luffy's ability, which is like the double dip on one Dawn. Where Zoro, if you have 5 characters, that one Dawn is now triggering for 6k power as opposed to just double dipping once. And that effectively gives you much more tempo, much more board control, but you are also susceptible to different things. I think that's what we're trying to get at. So obviously this list, it looks a little bit different than what I was proposing with my Zoro list. There's definitely some similarities in terms of the top end. We have Shanks, we have Luffy, but you're on specific cards that I haven't really talked too much about, or maybe I mentioned but wasn't able to play in my deck. I'd like to specifically talk about Red Hawk. How did we get to 4 Red Hawks? How are we here?
yeah, so it says gum gum on it, and I think it's a really cool word. So no, no. So Red Hawk, the story behind it is basically the story of Green being the Red Deck's potentially worst matchup, and we're gonna get into why so many of the cards in Green have play well into the Red matchup. But um, Red Hawk essentially deals a lot with residual blockers and residual like small cards that are used against us to try and control our board. So we uh, basically in advance tried to destroy things that are 4k power or less so that our cards are much less threatened, um, in a roundabout way, controlling the board a little bit better. It also gives us ability to have a card that has plus 4K to our cards, because we actually have, I guess, or normally a red deck normally has less defense because they're oversaturated with cards that have no combo power. But in this case, Red Hawk kind of alleviates that a little bit. So that's a little bit of why we chose to play 4. I think it's a very key card in the matchups that we're bad against, and the trigger effect in life is incredibly game changing. It's kind of like a pump Gibson effect in a way. So those are the
Yeah.
reasons for it.
So yeah, just to again go back to what you were saying. The just so you guys that don't know, the trigger effect of Red Hawk is when it triggers in life, you can give a character on the board minus 10,000 attack, which is basically negate an attack. There's very few characters that once you minus 10,000, they can effectively attack you. I think it's almost feasibly impossible. I cannot fathom the board states that are happening for that to be attacking. Maybe purple combination of cards could possibly do it, but even then, it really makes them have to pump their Dawn in such weird ways that then they might lose lethals in other formats. So the trigger effect is fantastic, but I really wanted to talk about the fact that yes, it does just deal with blockers. Because just for those who don't know, what Red Hawk says is you can pay 2 to make give a character or your leader plus 4,000 attack for this current battle, which is the 4,000 defense, and then also destroy or KO a character with 4,000 or less attack, right? Which you would think the killers, the Veggies, the Choppers, the Bonnies, the a bunch of very specific weenie cards that are just used to control our board, as Fernando was saying, immediately deals with them. And it also puts your opponent in weird board states. Like maybe they really need that killer to live, so they have to put 3 Dawn on the killer just before they even attack, because you have 2 up. You're presenting that 2 up to them, and they said, well, if they're presenting the 2, then I have to respect the Hawk, and if I do so, now I have to do specific things. And it just makes your opponent play so awkward. So personally, in my original video, I didn't really emphasize how good Hawk was, because I was under the impression that leaving up 2 Dawn is very difficult, and I do believe it is. But there are scenarios where if you can leave those 2 up, the amount of value that you get is insane. It's actually crazy. I have been testing playing 4 Hawks in multiple decks that can play Hawk, and it is very, very good. But besides that, the rest of the list kind of looks a little bit pretty simple. It has the 4 Otamas because no introduction of that card is bananas. We got 4 Choppers because one drop, 1K blockers are crazy. 4 of our Searchers. We're using Usopp as opposed to Sanji. What's going on there?
Yeah, so I would say Usopp is actually one of my favorite cards in the game because it's so game breaking in what he does. Very, very few cards in the game in general say draw cards, and in red, basically none of them do. And one of your hardest matchups, as little as it's known, it's the blue purple crocodile deck. It kind of fell out of favor a little bit in recent weeks, but if you in a large tournament like the Treasure Cup, you are bound to at least play it once, maybe twice if your rounds are a little unlucky. If you go maybe into the losers bracket and you see some of them there, or if you go into time, if that's possible. I don't know if it's best of one at the Treasure
It is
Cup or
going to be
not.
best. It's going to be best of ones until you get into, I think, top 32. Then it becomes best of threes.
Oh, gotcha. Well, in any event, in a large tournament like that, if you face that matchup, you don't want to just auto lose to it. It's also very likely that against blue and purple decks, you can read when they're forced to use, events to try to defend themselves. So in those scenarios, Usopp comes in really clutch because you can play one, you can play 2 of them. Essentially, if you have one just lingering on board, it draws you a little bit extra fuel so you can finish out the game, and you can recur it with Uta in the matchups that you need it. And besides that, it's just a 2K guard, so there's just nothing bad to be said about it.
And I think Fernando really missed one important aspect of the Usopp, and that's the fact that it is a 2-drop. Just if you see right next to Usopp, we have Sai and Vivi, which are just more 2-drops. So speaking about the 2-drops, Fernando, what is this version of the deck? Obviously, is not something that I mentioned. I had talked about Sai and Vivi and how I personally didn't like them, but I've started to grow fondness for them. But it's a very different playstyle. This is the 2-drop centered playstyle where we have 12 2-drops, and our idea, our plan, if you will, is to go second and just go 2-2 or 1-3, and then just get to that 5 board. So it kind of become like a pseudo law deck, and then start double dipping on the value. So the fact that he's a 2-drop when you put a Dawn under Zoro and you put a Dawn under it to activate him, now he's 5k. So he is
So
swinging
here's
just by
magic
triggering
number.
exactly his magic number specifically with his activation point, and it is just also a 2k counter. Then immediately moving up, we got Vivi and Sai for the same reason. One Dawn under Zoro means magic number 5 versus both of them. They aren't searchable, but they are combo power and they are just magic numbers. So I understand. And just because of their 2-drop status, that's where they play in the deck. Nico Robin, amazing card, invaluable in some very specific matchups. Again, the weenie blockers, using her in combination with Otamas, super, super good. And obviously one of the biggest threats in your deck. Uta is our double dip engine, our value engine, as you will. So we can play aggressively, lose the cards, not have to defend them too hard, and then Uta can recur them again. An amazing value card, and again, magic number 4k. Then we have Zoro. We all know how good Zoro is. Luffy, another rusher that is another finisher. Shanks for top end, and then again we've got into the 4 jet pistols because that card is an amazing, amazing card. In life, it's very sacky. In combination with certain cards, is amazing. And as a tempo card, there's nothing that really beats it. So that's really what Red has going for it. And I think that's what we have decided to think about making it, not making it, but denounce it as one of the top decks of the format. So I'm going to go ahead and switch our window here real quick. And this is basically, so we're going to switch our window here. And this is basically what we were talking about earlier, Fernando, in terms of what are we looking for in our mulligan. Let's start off by saying, so we're playing this deck. This is our deck list. Cool. We're table one. We're in round one. We shuffle up.
We're in table one.
We're in table
round
one.
one.
We're in table one,
And we'll
round
never
one,
be here
because
again.
we're the best. So, so we rolled the dice and we won the die roll. What's going on?
Yeah, for sure. So, as we said before, we're going to get to 4 or 5 eligible attackers, and then just do an all swing and
Whoa,
maximize.
hold up. Before we get to that is the general game plan. But I mean specifically, like once we've rolled that dice, and let's say we beat the die roll, we've decided now we're getting the ones to choose if we go first or second. Just by the deck build, this deck wants to inherently go
second most of the time.
All right, cool. So we choose to go second, and then all right, we've done that. We're going second. What are the cards that we're looking for?
Yeah, for sure. So the cards that you want to hard mulligan for, and it depends mostly on the matchup, but for the most part, you want the size and the VVs. Just to follow your main game plan when you go second. You normally want to choose that. If your opponent makes you go first for whatever reason, normally aggro decks are told to go second most of the time, because it's a little scary to go second against red, for example.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're kind of like building for that. So yeah, we get the 2 drops. If we don't get those, we can always do a combination of 1 drops and 3 drops on our turn 2, so it's not so bad. And then occasionally the Uta if we guard it early. So, but I would say mainly the 2 drops are where you're hard mulliganing for, and if you get 1 drop Nico Robin, that's fine also.
No, yeah, so certainly. So as Fernando was mentioning, you sit in front of a red player and you don't want to make them go first. Sitting down in front of an aggro player and making them go first is really scary because they get the first attack, they get initiative, and their 1-3-5 curve is kind of crazy. Think about it. You got
Really
Chopper
scary.
into Nico Robin into 5-drop Luffy. It's very difficult to deal with that curve, and very few cards and decks can effectively deal with that initial pressure. So they'll often tell you, hey, go second. And you're like, all right, cool. I wanted to go second anyways. Now enjoy this one. Sai Vivi, and then 1-drop, 3-drop, 2-drop. And then it's like you have 5 cards on board, and it's gaming is about to happen. You're not giving them the second draws by attacking their lives early. And then once you get that initial pressure and you can now sustain your board state, you then start giving them the hits and slowly chipping at them and eventually getting to your top end. So definitely these are the cards that we would think you would want to go ahead and hard mulligan for. And then let's talk about some of our tougher matchups. What are we really afraid of when we queue in our red deck?
Yeah, for sure. So you want to basically see anything that doesn't have green on it. These 2 leaders are probably your most difficult matchups. The reasoning, and I Trafalgar a little bit more than Eustace. Eustace a little bit more manageable, a little scarier in the late game, but then they're pretty difficult for you. The reasoning for that is because they have so many cards that tap down you dudes, like the ones you see here. Neko Mamushi, probably the worst card for the red player to see, and then Izo right after that. They just provide a lot of board control, both because Neko can go ahead and tap down 1, their leader deals with the card, and then the next turn, Nekomushi can also pressure some of your cards. So it's like bad times when they see that. Okiku, another option. Let's say they go first, they Okiku you on 3. The game becomes
Yeah.
really difficult. So Those are the main cards that you kind of want to have a plan against. And then for the green top end, also very difficult to deal with if you don't have the basically what I call a combo with minus 2k on the Captain Kid, the 8 drop, and then you pistol it. And then the 7 drop is just a little bit scary sometimes if they maybe make two of them. So those are all the cards that red struggles against. But all your other matchups are basically what you're playing for.
Of course. So just to, again, focus on what Fernando was trying to say there. Basically, Okiku on 3 is an abomination. That card, if they get to go first, they go Okiku on 3. It's really, really hard. Now they're pressuring your board and making it a little bit difficult for you to develop and go into that game plan of getting to 5, right? The problem is, and the way that we counter this is, as good as Nami is as a 1-drop, I've started to shift my idea that Chopper in the early game becomes insanely crucial for your deck, right? Because if they do field these Nekomamushis, these Izos, these Okikus, they have to now deal with Chopper, right? If I can defend my card and your card is now sideways, now I can deal with your threat with my leader and then commit to my board even further, and now you have less resources, right? So that is something that I think that Chopper succeeds in, and it allows you to defend against these tapping cards. So what we're looking for specifically versus green is some assortment of, again, the same game plan, but with an addition of a Chopper. If you don't see Chopper, Nami can search it, which is not a terrible thing to, like, if you have Nami, she might be able to hit you the Chopper, but Chopper really, really helps with these suspension effects. And as Fernando was saying, the kill combo Otama Pistol can answer anything on their board state, but you kind of want to save that as much as you can. Obviously, if you're forced to pitch cards and you're forced to use cards, you're forced to use them. But if you can hold them and you're a boss like that, and you can save it for the A drop, then there's no saving them. And it doesn't just have to be that. Maybe they start, they play the A drop and they're sitting behind a bunch of weenies. You can use Shanks as another form of getting there at the end, or the 5 drop Luffy as well. So those are the ways that we can try to manage these game plans. But again, be very mindful of all the suspension and resting effects that green has access to them, making it very, very difficult to keep that board state and board pressure. But let's talk a little bit about purple. So obviously, I think it's a little bit maybe a little too on the nose what we should be fearing on in purple. We talked here about, we have here the 2 kings and 10 drop Kaido, but that's not to say that we don't have to fear the Who's Who, the Brachio Bombers, and things along those lines. There are other cards that are in purple that can curve you out, as well as the 9 drop, but mostly the game plan versus purple is what, Fernando?
Yeah, so essentially what we do, and the reason we play a little bit more of a late game curve after we use all our 2 drops, is because we want to have plan A and plan B. Basically, plan A is everything that you do before you get 10 drop Kaidoed, and everything you do after you get 10 drop Kaidoed in the purple matchup. You try to get as much value out of the go wide strategy when you can in the early game, because the 10 drop is so potent against you. If they're at 2 or 3 life still, they can comfortably 10 drop, and then we're in a worse position. But if we can get them down to 1 or 0 life, maybe they can't even 10 drop Kaido anymore. So that's the reasoning mainly for doing the chip damage, like 5 attack strategy. The most crucial card for the purple players is the 7 drop king, because it very efficiently deals with 2 of our attackers. And I would say 6 drop king, obviously always pretty consistent against our utas or any type of rebuild that we might have. So
Yeah,
those are pretty good answers.
they're basically just looking for any form of interaction with our board. Green interacts with our board by resting it, and purple interacts with our board by destroying it. So it's definitely a very efficient deck. But as Fernando was pointing out, if we can get all that chip damages and we can cash in on what our leader is supposed to be doing, which is, once we have that wide board, if our wide board doesn't turn sideways and hit him before he deletes it, then we didn't really cash in on that character, is what I'm trying to get at. So we want to create that board, and we understand on the crucial turns, purple's going to 7, purple's going to 6. Let's hit them now before they can clear our minions, right? Clear our characters. Or they're going to 10. Be very cognizant of those turns, how your board state looks like. Because again, if you can get them to 1 or to 0 before they drop the 10 drop, they can't feasibly drop it without dying to just your leader on the retaliation. So if we can create those board states, make them a little uncomfortable, make them wiggling in their chairs, definitely we can go ahead and take the victory. So again, here's the deck list. Thank you, Fernando, for sharing it. I think it's a very good deck list, very thought-provoking. I know we didn't really talk much about blue, but the blue matchup is a very long and extensive matchup where, depending on the leader, if it's a crocodile or a flamingo, it goes very different, right? Flamingo
Yeah,
being
don't worry about blue. Red beats blue most of the time, so you'll be fine.
cap. But yeah, red definitely does pretty well into blue. It's something that you have to maybe practice, not something that we want to, because it's very different to all the other game plans, but you should have a
Yeah.
very good time outvaluing them just because your cards are naturally higher statted than theirs and you have a little bit more defense in terms of your red hawks and things like that. It really just cues in very well to their characters. Just don't play into their stuff and you can
Mm.
basically beat them pretty consistently. So again, thank you, Fernando, for sharing this deck list for us. I hope you guys will learn something. I hope we were able to get some good understanding of what we would want to do with this red deck into the treasure cups. If you like the video, guys, definitely leave a like down below. If you have any questions, any comments, I myself, again, very active in the comments, and I'm pretty sure since Fernando's joining me, he'll be able to, add some things to the comments as well if you guys commented down below. And if you haven't
Yeah.
joined the Pirate Crew today and you're enjoying the content, consider subscribing. And as always, guys, we will see you on the next one.
Bye.
Peace.